All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is Steve Sirheinrich from Curvo. Thanks for joining this webcast. We're excited to kick off a series of the Curvo Quick 30s, about 30 minutes of insights into implant and PPI categories. Today's topic is endoscopy. And we are going to be taking questions throughout. So just a little housekeeping. You should be able to see a Q&A button within the webinar console. All you have to do is click that and type in your question, and I will be monitoring those. And we will take them, we'll watch them throughout, but at the end, we'll also have a period of time for questions. So feel free to type that. We'd appreciate it if you'd ask some questions. All right, now I'd like to introduce the people who will be talking today. So we have two perspectives, the sourcing perspective and the physician perspective. And so from the sourcing perspective is Andy Perry and Drew Mays. And then from physician perspective is Dr. Karen Canlis. And Karen will actually be moderated, her questions moderated by Andy. She submitted some information to us. So we're real excited to get this kicked off. I'm going to hand it over to Andy Perry, co-founder and CEO of Curvo, to do the introductions from here. Go for it, Andy.
Yep. Hi, everyone. This is Andy Perry with Curvo. Appreciate you joining today. As Steve mentioned, what we're wanting to do with these Curvo Quick 30s is to take a look at what's going on in the marketplace in a category, hear from a physician, and start to string together a little bit of a model or an approach based on those two things for you to have a sourcing and contracting strategy in that particular category. So Drew Mays is joining as well. What we're going to do today, after this quick little orientation around the Quick 30 premise, we're going to jump into the GI lab in the endoscopy space today. As Steve had mentioned, Dr. Karen Conless, who is just a truly excellent doctor that I've had the privilege of getting to know, Drew has as well, was kind enough to do a Q&A with us, and that's going to really be the format going forward. We're not, with maybe a few exceptions, don't anticipate asking too many doctors to step out in the middle of clinic time or case time to join us for a webinar, but really, get a chance to pick their brain and have them give us a download on what they see going on in product categories and procedure techniques with their specialty. So we'll have that perspective first. I'll go over that. And then Drew is going to dig into some Curvo data with our Eco Market Insights feature, talk about some things that he's seeing in terms of where pricing is going, relationship to market share and volume, et cetera. And then also share a few how-tos on some things that we've seen work pretty effectively in terms of a sourcing and contracting strategy. So again, appreciate everyone's time. A little bit of background on Dr. Conless. She's board certified gastroenterology, med school, University of Louisville, Duke Fellowship trained, over 10 years of working as a practitioner in the space, post-grad, and as a practitioner at Deaconess Health System. We submitted this Q&A to Dr. Conless, and I'll go over the details with you here. We also have it shared for purposes of the anybody who gets the slides after the webcast. But you may want to think about this as you look at the structure. You might have some tweaks, but it's just a suggested approach of a few things that you might be interested in knowing from members of your medical staff in terms of ways that they learn about new products, ways that they discover the pricing of products if they are privy to that information, how that's being circulated and compared across their colleagues, interesting product spaces to them, all of that good stuff. So, we asked a few of these, and we'll just go over the answers together while we're here. So we asked Dr. Karen first, how often do you look at new products? And it's about quarterly. There's some really important conference you may want to be aware of in the GI space. It's DDW. It's Digestive Disease Week. I think it's in June this week. And a kind of recurring theme from some of Karen's answers were DDW is a big source of information in the space. So if you have somebody on your team, if endoscopy is on your radar, and you've got somebody on your team that maybe attending DDW is a stretch, I don't know, but at least being aware of what's going on at DDW, consuming some of the conference resources or getting access to some slides could be a good way to stay in sync with your physicians as they come back from that week and have some procedural techniques or products in mind that may have launched that they may have learned about there. So just be aware of that as an industry knowledge and content resource, that Digestive Disease Week as a potential resource there. Asking her, how often do you research alternative products to use in procedures? She's saying she's not actively researching products, but she's reading journals. She's attending meetings or conferences. She's talking with reps and also colleagues about new techniques or devices at least quarterly. And it's going to come as no surprise to you, but as we go through the course of these kind of learning methods for Karen, you'll want to pay attention to how much of a source reps are of information, all the way down to cost information. So just be aware of how you and your organization and the supply chain are equipping your medical staff members with the information about the cost of the devices, because they're going to get it somewhere. And in most cases, we want to at least be in that conversation, if not, kind of being the leading authority in our organizations about device costs and whatnot. So what criteria guides your evaluation of new products? She's considering cost, of course, the effectiveness, clinical trial results, and colleague experience. How do you learn how much a device costs? Sales rep, most commonplace, and then hospital staff she lists as well. Now, how much does the device cost matter to you? We asked Dr. Karen, and it matters a lot. She is, an extremely intelligent individual, very knowledgeable, but also cares a lot about the cost to her patients as well as the clinical benefit. So if it's a cost that's high without a clear, significant benefit, then she's not going to pursue it. But if the benefit's significant and a reasonable cost, then she would absolutely implement change. So she's doing those value equations in her head, as most physicians do. And Drew and I see continually how much physicians are hungry for cost information. And it's a real opportunity for supply chain to be that trusted, credible data provider when it comes to just equipping your surgeons with the cost of the devices that they use. In general, I know I'm making generalizations, but in general, it matters to them. And Karen's no different. How often do you discuss device costs with your peers? She says basically every time a new device is considered. So probably at least every 2 or 3 months. So think about the way that information is circulating among your medical staff. They talk with one another. They consult one another. They talk out this value equation about device costs. And we in supply chain, we want to be that trusted strategic partner to the clinical organization. So we have to have that info on the ready proactively for them. 7, we asked her, do you know how much the hospital is being reimbursed for the devices that you're using or the procedures that you're doing? And she says roughly, but not always. And there's another gap that's a real opportunity for us in supply chain, is to keep our surgeons informed about our reimbursement on a case. If you've got a scope case for which you're only being reimbursed a few $100s and a medical staff member doesn't know that, they may not ever ask you for a few $100 device because they understand the constraints, or they may have a reason why downstream it's going to help. But it's a real opportunity there to, again, equip with data, equip with information. So some things we also wanted to know, as a format for this, what kinds of products are off limits versus what kinds of products are ultra commoditized and fair game. And so Karen says there aren't any products that are, sacrosanct or in which she's unwilling to switch. Anything is really up for consideration as she's juggling that value equation. But in particular, in the GI space, the products that she's really willing to consider alternatives because there's no appreciable difference in the technology. And she right off the bat had forceps and sclerotherapy needles. And I did a quick check just out of curiosity. I know we've seen the price of forceps really start to have the bottom fall out of it a couple of years ago. But on sclerotherapy needles, I did a quick research, and we're still seeing variation in pricing on a box of 5 from anywhere from $100 to $300 for a box of 5. So just under $100 to over $300 for a box of 5. This is a category where a surgeon's saying they're all the same. So just be aware, could be an opportunity for you to look at getting some actionable savings there. We asked Karen if she participates in any value analysis committees. She doesn't. Missed opportunity for Deaconess here if you've got an extremely cost-conscious, value-conscious physician. definitely a chance to engage a medical staff team member there. And then lastly, we're also really wanting to know about new procedural techniques or products that she's aware of that are coming out and how she found out about them. So she mentioned hemorrhoidal banding and coagulation. She learned that from colleagues and from Digestive Disease Week. Gastric balloon, which is kind of top of mind for lots of folks in this space. Spray hemostasis coming from the reps. So be aware out there as you're sourcing, contracting this category. The push for spray hemostasis could be increasing right now. I don't know if that's something unique to Dr. Karen, but just be aware that spray hemostasis is on her radar, as well as the endoscopic ultrasound liver biopsy. And again, coming from reps as well as articles. So these are spaces, if you're kind of wanting to be forward looking in your contracting strategy, a couple of areas to see if you've got accounted for in the way that you're going to be going to market. So anyway, all in all, very appreciative of Dr. Conless's time and her insights. These questions, for you can be somewhat of a template. If you've got additions or subtractions to those, we'd love to hear it. Steve's going to mention it at the end, but we are recruiting more sourcing perspective subject matter experts to join us in future calls and future categories. And feel free to use any of these questions for your own purposes with your medical staff. So at this point, I think I'd like to turn it over to Drew, let him open up some Curvo data from the Eco Market Insights, talk about things that we're seeing going on in the space. So Drew, take it away.
Thanks, Andy. This is Drew Mays, Director of Customer Success here at Curvo. So just going to kind of walk you through some vendor insights that we've seen and then we continue to see. So what you're looking at here on the screen is just some overview or a high-level vendor analysis or vendor data that we see in the endoscopy space. So the market pricing trend is ticking down almost at 1%. The average top incumbent at each facility is holding about 55% of the market. So whether that be Boston, whether that be Cook, whether that be Olympus, Medivators, and we'll get to that and more in the next few slides. And then we're also trying to show you what the relationship of price performance is to market share and volume. So for both of these, overall market share, we're showing a weak but inverse effect on price performance. So it's weak, but we're saying the more market share you give them, the worse the pricing gets.
For the category.
For the category as a whole, correct. Yeah. And then the same with volume, very weak, but an inverse reaction. So the more volume you give them, the more their teeth get sunk in and the more they have you. So maybe your as a category as a whole, your pricing starts to trend the wrong way. So then you have a very busy bubble graph, and it's just an overview of all of the vendors into this space. And each one of those little bubbles is a representation of a different facility within Curvo. Much easier to see when it's on the application and you can kind of navigate through it. But it's just showing you all of the different vendors or manufacturers that are in this space. We commonly think, when you think endoscopy, you think Boston Scientific, you think Olympus, you think Cook Medical. There's a lot of new players in this space, especially around the commodity type products within endoscopy.
And if you want to look for some of those insights, just kind of visually around the relationships to market share and volume with price, you'd see, along this vertical axis, price performance, lots of tiny bubbles, so low volumes that are still high price performers, and going left to right as market share. So low market share, tiny bubbles, still doing some really good pricing performance. That's part of what's influencing that weak inverse relationship. So good insights, Drew.
So this slide here is just, we've narrowed it down and filtered out everyone except for Boston Scientific. So what this shows me is to get to if you look at the left axis, there's a nice cluster between the 50% and 75% on price performance. But you can also tell that it's shifted to the right, the bubbles are. So that's, to me, that's showing you got to get to 50 to 75% market share with Boston to be able to get above the median in price.
So this would suggest that with Boston uniquely, it does take a little more market share and perhaps a little more volume in order to do better on pricing,
Correct.
right?
Yep. And then you can obviously tell that there are some below the median that have decent sized volume. So the size of the bubble or the size of the diamond, that's reflective of the volume at that particular facility. So some decent volume with some below average price performance, but just a nice, easy way of seeing where you are versus where the market is.
So the reality with Boston, if you want to save money, you may have to move some business.
Yep, correct. Yep.
Interesting.
All right, so the next one we're going to look at is U.S. endoscopy. So this one here, a little bit different. You got a stretch from maybe 15% to 100% in price performance, and pretty much no market share. You know, everything is below the 25% market share. Not everything. There's a few outliers, but there's a cluster around the median in price performance. But what this suggests to me is there's no really rhyme or reason why people get better pricing. It's probably because they're asking, and they're forcing U.S. endoscopy to give them better pricing, or they're going to kick them out the door.
So you see that kind of tall, narrow band of density in that data across all price performances at roughly the same market share. It's basically saying you got to pull out your best stick, carrot, or hug strategy, puff out your chest, and ask, and you don't necessarily have to move any business. You might just need to do some tough talk.
Yeah. And this is going to be, U.S. endoscopy is going to be around the snares and the forceps, stuff that you just mentioned, Dr. Karen said were commodities. Right. They were technology that's all the same. So should be, you would think in theory, be an easy switch if needed.
Interesting.
So, now we're looking at Cook Medical. So got that big band on the 0% market share. But you start to see as the volume, as market share grows, the price, a little bit of better pricing. So to me, it suggests that if you gave them a little bit more market share, you could possibly get a little better price. And it looks like volume, the bigger bubbles are more towards the median or above the median. So maybe volume outweighs market share with Cook a little bit. But
yeah, so that's what I would see too. And so maybe this would be something like an aggregation strategy where you might want to pair up. If you've got peer facilities that you're part of an aggregation group, you may want to look at trying to combine and aggregate with tiers. Or, I'm just kind of speculating if volume matters other than recruiting more docs in your GI lab, pairing up an aggregation might be your best bet. So interesting.
All right, now we got Olympus. Got a really big cluster right at the median, right at the 50% price performance with little to no volume. And really, it doesn't look like market share or volume are affecting the price. I mean, Olympus kind of is what it is, what it looks like. They're going to give you around average. But could go back to the U.S. endoscopy example of maybe if you ask, maybe they give it to you, or maybe if you can kick them out the door or show a credible threat, maybe you can get better pricing. Not much above the 75% price performance. With Olympus, they're a little limited with obviously they have the scope business kind of on lockdown, but their instrumentation isn't, their portfolio isn't as big than Cook and Boston Scientific. So maybe that's why they just keep their pricing kind of average or run of the mill. I don't know.
So this is suggesting that they're only able to cover, maybe up to about a quarter of the market in most cases, but a lot of density around the median. So not a lot of variability. So if you're using Olympus, you may not expect to get any big savings necessarily. You see some movement, what looks like within the interquartile range within the 25th and the 75th, but lots of clustering around the median. So in the marketplace, just not a ton of variability in the pricing there with Olympus. Yeah, interesting.
I think this is the last one we're going to look at. So Medivators, formerly known as Burn Medical. So this one's going to be Medivators concentrates on detergents, endo kits, water filtration, with a little bit of instrumentation. But you can notice that the cluster is right there along with Olympus. So you can't really cover everything in the market or everything in this space. You can tell that volume doesn't really do a whole lot for you because the bigger bubbles are actually, some of them are below the 50th and seem to be trending down. And then you have the outlier out to the right that has the most market share, which but not in decent volume, but not really doing great in pricing. So that would be the same. I would think the same with as we did with Olympus, that can't cover everything. Understand they can't cover everything. Probably not going to drop the floor in savings too much with their products, but looking to get the average seems to be the strategy within Medivators as well.
Yeah, and some density that stays consistent as you move across market shares. So really no correlation there. Yeah, very interesting. So Drew, what are some of the most either innovative, effective, or both contracting strategies that you're seeing going on among customer base from your own experience as well in GI right now?
So, we've noticed where customers are splitting out the hemostatic clips and the forceps and taking those to market by themselves because they can really get aggressive. We've seen the three main, Olympus, Cook, and Boston, really get aggressive with the pricing with those products. And that's going to be your most commonly ordered instrumentation within an endoscopy lab. So taking those and looking at those by themselves, as a whole, your endoscopy suite may be doing really well, but you may be getting killed on the forceps or the clips and don't realize it because you're looking at it from the cloud view. So digging into it and kind of parsing it out into individual little categories, forceps, bite blocks, detergents, clips, and seeing, okay, well, I found the squeaky wheel, and just taking that one to market and leaving everything else alone.
Yeah, lots of competition there in those clips and the forceps, which, we got our physician corroboration.
Yeah.
They're all the same.
Yeah, totally. One of the other things, it's a hot topic or has been for years, is bundling. Bundling scopes with instrumentation, with service agreements. So bundles can be effective if you can see within the bundle and realize. So if you're not bundled and you want to go to a bundle, making sure that you still have visibility into what you're paying for a service agreement, what you're paying for the instrumentation, what you're paying for the capital that you may be leasing. So if it's an Olympus deal, they can cover a lot of that.
Right.
But if you come into a situation where you walk into a bundle, being able to untether it a little bit and get good visibility into the spend. And one of the things that I did before coming to Curvo was manage some ASCs. And one of the things that we did was we brought in Boston Scientific and Pentax Capital, the scopes, Boston Scientific, all of the instrumentation, with no scopes. We brought them in together and said, we want to bundle, but we want to bundle together. We want you two to compete with Olympus. And they were both for it because they knew then they could compete with Olympus in the fact that they had the capital side and the disposable side. So.
Sure. No, that's great. And, the bundling to keep the balance sheet light and to keep the capital, keep the expense operational, could make a lot of sense in some circumstances. Also going to keep you less agile in the marketplace, as when you have something like the bottom falling out of the forceps market or lots of competition in clips, obviously you can't move in and out as easily, but it sounds like the big takeaway would be regardless of what the capital strategy is with the contract, you want to preserve that visibility. So if it's an earn out on the disposables or whatever it is that you may want to move to a more preferential financing treatment of those scopes at some point, you got the ability in the contract to do it, and you got the visibility to know when you should.
Right? And then I would say with the earnouts too, having good visibility into your spend, because those vendors aren't knocking on the door when you earn out. You need to know when you've earned out so that you can go back and say, okay, time to lower that price because I've earned it out.
That's a very good point.
So good visibility into spend is the most most important thing with any of those bundles. So, and then the biggest trend that we've seen is the companies like US Endoscopy, EndoChoice, GI Supply, and there's a few others that I'm forgetting, but they're really taking over the commodity space within endoscopy. So your bite blocks, your detergents, your cleaning brushes, your endo kits that put them all in together. You know, used to you only got a custom tray or a custom pack for surgeries done in the OR. Now they're making them for custom packs for the endoscopy lab. So those companies are really coming in and doing what surgery did years ago and really dropping the floor out of those commodity items.
Gotcha.
So that's probably the hottest thing in endoscopy right now.
So a lot of those commodities that traditionally would come through the larger, more clinical product suppliers, seeing much of that getting split out and more commoditized, and lots of savings coming that way.
Yep, totally. And then, you know, using the market insights, I mean, there's different ways you can take it. You can go Boston 60% and get the best price tier that they have or they're willing to offer, and then fill the bottom of it with these smaller companies and really. So I think endoscopy sets itself up for a good contracting situation if done right, because no one is really requiring 90 to 100% of the business.
It is a fractured market.
Yeah,
you're right. And you didn't see statistically an appreciable benefit or opportunity to go beyond kind of a dual source, 50 to 75% market share. There just wasn't enough juice in the squeeze there,
correct,
or if even coverage. So that fractured market can definitely work to your advantage.
Yes, totally.
Oh, great insights. Thanks, Drew.
Yep.
Steve, at this time, I think we can open up to the audience to questions or comments or ways to do this better, any and all of the above.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Andy and Drew. I really liked that conversation back and forth. I hope that everybody on the call picked up some nuggets. We do have a few questions, and I want to point out if anybody else has a question, just go to that Q&A button and put it there, and I will make sure we get it addressed. But the first question sounds like, Drew, really for you, and it's around sourcing this category. And the question is, do you see most hospitals, when they're running a sourcing project, actually getting savings in the endoscopy category when they go to market?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those that we see every new customer that we bring on to Curvo. Endoscopy is always an opportunity for savings. Sometimes we have to dig a little bit and find that the diamond in the rough. Maybe it's in the clips, maybe it's in the forceps, maybe it's in the detergents. But yeah, endoscopy is always something we see. Customers have savings opportunity, and our customers have had good success running sourcing events through Curvo with endoscopy.
And so it sounds like maybe there's an issue about, do you actually end up realizing the savings? And I'm curious. I'd like to know, maybe offline, what's behind that question. I'm wondering if it's about moving parts, going up some areas, down in other areas, and it all kind of washes out. So it would be interesting. But no, it sounds like, we do definitely see spin go down. We do see savings being realized in endoscopy. Would like to unpack that question a little more offline. Maybe that'd be great to know where that's coming from.
And here's another one that kind of relates, but it's more about our customers we work with using contracts, their own local contracts, or going through their GPO for endoscopy products.
Yeah, we see most probably are doing it through their GPO. I mean, they're at least in the start, we're seeing them just accept that GPO pricing and don't know what they don't know until they see get it loaded into Curvo, and then realize that the GPO is doing a decent job, but there's definitely room for improvement. But one of the things we've seen them do is keep it on GPO paper, but do a local agreement to get the pricing lower. But yeah, definitely see it both ways. We've seen some go even off of GPO, but most are going to stay on GPO and just do a local agreement to access better pricing. So.
We're definitely seeing the best pricing coming from locally sourced and negotiated pricing, but it's not uncommon for that to stay on GPO paper.
Totally.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty accurate.
And here's a follow-up to that too. How long is it taking um, hospitals to run a sourcing or savings project in this category?
Our average project overall is probably 3-4 weeks. I would say the endoscopy is a 3-week process. Now that's data going out to the vendors, data back in, analysis done, and meetings with the members or with our customers. Probably I'd say 5 to 6 week process to close the loop, ink to paper, contract signed. So anywhere from a 3 to 5 week process, depending on how quickly they can get the contract signed.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of that is being able to put all of the more clinical items as well as the commodities in one event or market basket, and pretty much bring everybody to the table. I'm thinking of one particular customer in mind. Bring everyone to the table and see who's got the best of what to offer, and then kind of rebuild that spin according to that. That can trim a lot of time to do it that way versus trying to parse out the category ahead of time and maybe run multiple events. That's I would suspect a lot faster cycle time than a non-Curvo method. Not to be too biased here.
I think it depends on if it's an RFP or if it's a repricing initiative. So
true.
So if you're doing full RFP where you're sending your spend to every vendor that 3 or 4 different vendors and you're having them cross-reference it, that's your 3 to 5 week process. If you're sending vendor A their own spend back and maybe it's just hemostatic clips, that's probably a 1 to 2 week process. It's very short. So it just depends on the strategy that you want to go with. And what you're trying to get out of it. So
good question.
Yeah, that's good answer. One more question from the audience, and then we'll probably wrap it up unless there's some more come in. But this one's around that surgeon connection, the alignment there. And it is, what are you seeing? Are you seeing many surgeons engaged with their supply chain around these sourcing projects, kind of like a Dr. Karen out there, or is she kind of a unique character?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And if I'm going to make generalities, I'm going to say that physicians in general are eager to be engaged in data. Whether or not you've got that physician wanting to go sit across the negotiating table from a device company, that might be a little more rare. But your surgeons are hungry for cost information, interested in cost information, oftentimes offended when they learn about a price benchmark or opportunity, because their source of information is the rep who will say, this costs X and you're getting a great price, or the favorite one is it's on contract. So if I'm going to make generalities, I would say the interest in device cost and the engagement in data is very high across multiple physicians and specialties. We in the supply chain really have not actioned that opportunity that we've got to be that trusted, credible partner to the clinical organization. So I'd say the appetite for the data, the engagement in the data is very high. Whether that individual is willing to, go through the negotiations arm in arm with you versus just being a supporter, that might be a little more rare. There are some who, they get a bee in their bonnet and they are ready. But for the most part, the hunger for the data is there. They want to know what these things cost. When they have that information, they like to make good decisions with that value equation and to be your supporter in these spend management exercises. So I would say it's common. And I'd say the onus is on us in supply chain to be able to give them that information readily and kind of be their trusted partner in it. So, I don't know, any thoughts, Drew?
No, I would totally agree. Most surgeons we come across want to know. And supply chain, for the most part, has always been timid to share information because they don't think the other side wants to see it, but I think the other side wants to see it. So
or you're worried how it's going to be used against you or something.
Right. So.
Okay, great. Well, that I think wraps it up. Just some closing comments. Drew, if you hit the next slide. Future Curvo Quick 30 webcast coming up. Lots of different categories to cover. Those of you who might be listening without the slides, I won't go through them all, but top ones, total joints, spine, sports medicine is actually in 2 weeks with Dr. Anshu Singh. And if you have any other questions about this topic or others, we've got contact information for Andy and Drew on the next slide. They simply reached Andy@curvolabs.com or Drew@curvolabs.com. Don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to answer questions. And would also like to offer, if you're curious about this category and how your pricing looks, we do a complimentary review of your endoscopy category. It's very simple to upload, spend, and get that reviewed. And you can reach me, Steve@curvolabs, if you are interested in that. One last thing to address, Andy pointed out earlier, we are recruiting for those categories there, for the sourcing experts, the sourcing perspective. And if any of you feel like you got some really great insights or just something you wanted to share, we'd love to have you on and let you talk about that category, share some ways that you've approached it, some stories, some war stories maybe that you have. Would love to hear that as well. So don't hesitate to reach out to get involved in any of these future webcasts. All right, we will be sending this out, this recording. If you're interested, it'll be on the website and we can email it to you directly. So with that, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Drew, and thank you, Dr. Conless. Until next time, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Steve. Amazon.